Hi,
Great.
good afternoon. Hello, everyone. In Plymouth, it's an empty. I'm talking to seats in.
It's an empty suit.
Oh, I can barely see. Okay, it's okay. I actually think they're gone.
There's stuff on the table.
Well, when you come back.
Okay.
Kat, Deb, and Jansu. So thanks, everyone, and for everyone in the room. Thanks for being here. So actually, Kathryn and I are going to tag team this topic. So I'm going to start off talking about content and sharing some things about, what we do and the importance of how the content that we create, how powerful of a connection it is if you can take that and also pair it with your own personal stories or insights or thoughts or reflections upon that. So it's really kind of been like a known thing that people generally speaking, will like to do business with you if they can like, trust, and respect you, which, by the way, I stole that. That's like Dale Carnegie. That's not my thoughts, but he was a brilliant guy and made a lot of money writing books about this. So it's a very true concept today where people want to hear stories about what's going on, particularly with you. It's a human interest element that is stood the test of time in terms of making connections with people. And so we want to just kind of share a little bit about what we're doing and the importance of how that connects to what we're trying to accomplish in content marketing and just accomplish overall in attracting new prospects to MRA, but also, retaining our current members. Thanks, Mike, you're back. Good to see you. Okay. All right.
Hi, everyone.
So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I have just a few slides that I wanted to go through. One of which is, this is actually a little bit of a recap from something that I did, I want to say back in maybe 2018. It was the MRA 2.0. But just to kind of give a foundation of what do we mean by content? We talk about content a lot, but really, what is that? It's any information we read, see, hear about, learn, or experience. Okay, so generally speaking, that's content. And we obviously have a lot of that to give out to our members, but we thoughtfully try to figure out what's the best avenue or way in which they want to maybe consume that information. So sometimes we'll take a piece of content and we'll turn it into a video. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's an article, maybe it becomes something more like a e-learning kind of training class. So all of that it takes a thoughtful process of figuring out what's the best medium or channel in which we want to communicate it. And sometimes we take a topic and content and we'll say, this is good in 5 different kinds of channels. This would be, able to be consumed in many different ways that people want to get information. So format is just kind of the way we want to present it. We could present things in an audio format. We could present it visually. We could present it, with certain branding types of things. So that all gets put into play with this. And then really there needs to be a strategy for getting that out. And how do you do it in a thoughtful way that's actually going to get the attention of people. That there's a lot that people are inundated with on their phones and in their inboxes every day. So oftentimes I'll hear people say, I don't have enough time to read. And I'll challenge them and say, well, but you do have time to pick the things that you want to read. So you do have time. So how do you cut through that clutter and how do we become the ones that they want to read? Because they'll make time to read. It's just they won't read everything. They'll pick what they want to read. So for us to have kind of a strategy or plan that helps us deliver our content to meet the needs of our members when and how they need it and want it. So this is just a visual, really kind of crude, but little visual of how we take content and we can push it out in those different channels that I mentioned and have them in different kind of formats. And so that's just to give you an idea of wow, there's a lot of different ways in which we can disseminate information. And we do that in a thoughtful way that most of the time incorporates many of these things. It's very, very rare that we will create content that is a one and done, that only works well as an article and we can never use it or talk about it anywhere else. That would be a waste of time. But so we don't do that. We try to get it out in all these different areas. So the evolution of content, basically information, like I mentioned, it is everywhere and it's all over. And a lot of times it'll seem overwhelming of what we want to take in. So usually there's, like I said, people will say there's just not enough time to consume, but they really will read the things that, that matter or they prioritize. So basically, how do we cut through that clutter is by storytelling. That's how we get more heard and recognized, and how we are seen as more real human beings, people that live, have experiences, have been in the same shoes, have done the same or similar things. That's how people will start to be like, "Ooh, you get me. I like you. I want to hear more. I think you're smart." So that's how that evolves. So really, content marketing, I think is more of a feelings game. There's a lot of us as human beings, a lot that contributes to how we feel. So the things that we say or write or do really influence how others feel about you. Like I said, that's how they make connections. Either sometimes I'll say it's like a head connection where they'll, maybe we have similar backgrounds in education. So we'll make a connection just for from that standpoint, or a heart connection might be we have the same experiences, we have children, and, so we'll make a connection that way. And then another way you can think about it is a hands connection, which is having to do maybe we do similar charity work. And so, in the act of us doing that kind of thing, we make a connection. And anyway, facts and information are important. So I don't want to downplay the fact that data is so helpful and relevant to individuals. But here's where our stories are 100% unique because they're ours. And that's what's pretty cool, because that can differentiate how we tell a story. So really kind of want to wrap up by talking about how it's really on all of us to help in this effort, because you all have a voice. You all are very smart in your different lines of businesses and subject matter expertise, and you've lived this life, you've worked with members, so you definitely have that experience to provide your perspective and insights. So that means that as we develop and share the opinions that we have based on that experience, the best way to get it done is through where you shine, like where your area of expertise is. So I think strong content and storytelling leads to a better member experience. So I just kind of wanted to tee up this whole concept of content itself, and then Kathryn's going to talk about the storytelling piece. But basically, we want to reiterate that as you are trying to connect with members and doing more on social media, like Courtney was talking about last week with LinkedIn, that there's a lot of things already developed that you can use and share, that you can grab off our website and send out to members and prospects. But if you can't find something, or you're struggling to see, a connection to maybe an insight that you have, but what do we have related to it? This is where we can help and connect the dots for you. So any one of us are able and available to help with that.
Just connecting the social media aspect of it, and a comment on what Laura Greenlees did for the conference coming up, HR conference. I don't know, Patrick, if you guys created the little brochures, or what do you call them, posts? The postcards, or they're like mini postcards that she sent out to the lead team, 5 of them, so that we could use that for our social media posts. I thought that was made it much easier for me than to do something, because there was already something created. So
I know, and that's the beauty of it, is that there's so many things already created. Don't think that you have to start from scratch. Just ask or keyword search on the website. You'll find that things are already there at your fingertips. So just reuse and repurpose, and it's nice when the work has already been done. So I guess overall too, I should stop here and say if there's any questions or what questions might you have about either what we provide through publications, like what can we share, member resources, anything like that. Or if you think of it, maybe at the end when Kathryn's done too, we could open it up to questions.
The hot topic surveys have been great.
Yes, they have. I would like to get a little bit more mileage out of hot topic surveys,
Right.
because it pairs data, which any employer loves to see how they benchmark, right, against others. And then I think there's a larger story we can tell. Like, that's what the data is saying, but now what should you do with that? Should you do something different than you're doing now? Should you stay status quo? What are the pros and cons? All of that good stuff.
So use social media to increase participation beyond just members too. So we have more people
Definitely.
participating, companies participating.
Yeah, and that you bring up a good point too, Kathy, because we tried that with the diversity one that we did last year. And so that was our way of like dipping our little baby toe in it. It's like, what if we tried to expand this out beyond our membership and we got more participation that way? Anything I was missing, Kathryn, that we talked about, or I'll jump in maybe with examples? Okay.
Okay, so I need to get out to mine. We're just going to switch the presentation here.
Yours is already up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I
just
think
in
it's
the
on
background there.
Oh, there you go. You're doing it lefty.
I am left-handed.
Oh, I didn't
I
realize
am a
that.
lefty.
Oh, yeah.
It's a righty mouse.
I'm trying, yes. Thank you. Nice music to tee it up with, too. All right, so yeah, a lot of what Lynell talked about, I will be reiterating, but it really is important to the whole story and telling and content portion of what we were trying to do. So really, I'm just going to talk about the importance of storytelling and why we're using it. And I'm just actually very glad to be here with you all this morning because my morning was incredibly crazy. You won't believe what happened on my way to work, and I don't need to get into details, but it really was really crazy. So I'm happy to be sitting here with you. I'm happy.
I feel like there's a story that you should probably tell us.
Oh no, we don't need to get it.
Okay.
But anyways, but
Yeah, exactly.
and that's actually kind of the point because I have your attention now, don't I? You're all sitting there
Well, I
thinking,
am curious.
oh, what happened? What was going on? Or maybe you're thinking, oh yeah, I too had this crazy morning. And so it's that storytelling. It gets people engaged. It draws them in. You're all looking at me, not just because I'm talking, but you're kind of looking at me going, well, what did happen? So you're engaged and you really want to hear more. And that really is the power of storytelling.
Nothing really happened?
Well, actually, it did, but no, I won't go there. Anyway, but that's the power of storytelling. That's the impact that storytelling has for you. So let's talk about that. Lynell mentioned there's so much clutter out there. There is so much going on. Our phones, our email, our texts. There needs to be something that breaks through that clutter, and storytelling does that. It gets your attention. It engages the reader. Or the listener, it involves them in a conversation. It's not just you talking and throwing information at them, throwing facts at them. It really engages them in a conversation. So you get involved in it. And that connection, I think like Lynell said, that connection is really what's the key to it all. Just to share some stats, because like Lynell said, data with storytelling is really most impactful. So according to the Stanford Graduate School of Business, storytelling, you remember stories 20 times more than you just do facts alone. So that's a lot. So it's good to remember that. You want stats and storytelling together. You're more likely to be persuaded by a story than you are just reading an article about facts. And then when you combine the data and the storytelling, you're hitting them both intellectually and emotionally. So stats and storytelling together are really important. The science of storytelling. So our brains are actually wired to learn better when there's meaning with and emotion with the words. So again, it's that narrative, it's that storytelling. Your brains focus in on the story. You remember those stories more. You're paying attention to them. And then also it's proven by science that the neurons actually, so we're talking about storytelling, but it's all about science. There's a brain science to this. So the neurons that actually fire when you're listening to a story are the same ones that fire when you're doing that action. So that's why when you're watching a scary story on TV, your heart starts to quicken, your pace quickens, you're scared, you're feeling that emotion. You know it's not happening to you. It's some character on the screen. It's not real, but you can feel it. You can feel that emotion. So our brains are actually making us feel those emotions when we hear stories. So let's talk about the emotional side of a good story. A good story, it caters to the reader's emotion, and we as people, we make purchases based on our emotions. That's also proven. A good story, it understands your customer. It knows who they are, it knows what their needs are. A story also says, hey, I've been there before. You're giving them examples. I've been in your shoes, and I can help you get where you want to go. It helps solve a problem for them. And then also a good story, like any good story, it has a happy ending. So it shows success. You know, they all lived happily ever after. You want to end your stories with a good success. And I do have some examples, and I won't go into them. These will be up on, we put them on Chatter, we put them on Mike's weekly touch points on Monday mornings. I think we also put them on our web and Salesforce updates. So I do want to have you take a look at some of these examples. These will actually be live links for you. But the first two are actually TV commercials. And TV is great at storytelling because they can mix a bunch of your senses together. They use video, they use the stories, they use imagery, they have music, so it puts all of these things, package it together for you. But these two examples are really great. They're actually testimonial videos, and it's just someone's testimony who's talking about how this trauma team saved their life. It's not a commercial about Freighter, it's not a doctor talking, it's someone whose life was saved by it. So it's a really impactful testimony. There's another one, the University of Phoenix. Again, it's someone who was saved by a student of the University of Phoenix. So it's a testimony, his testimony. It's not a professor talking about it. It's not even a student. It's someone who was helped by a student. So these are all just different and good ways that they've used storytelling to share an impact. Subaru has commercials out there. They're all about love. Love driving a Subaru, love my car. Car manufacturers, they're brilliant at this. They can take something, it's four wheels and steel, and they make you fall in love with the car. They make you fall in love with the concept of driving their car. They have families and love and puppies, and they just bring everything together, everything that like hits our emotions, the fun, the excitement, great music, great scenery. So they're bringing all of this together to tell a story about this great car that you have, and then emotionally you're like, I really want to drive that car. I love that car. I need that car. So they're brilliant at it. Another link to Michael Katz. I know a lot of you probably already subscribe to his newsletters. He's a master storyteller. He is great at what he does. So again, those are really good fun reads. And then also, just this one, you'll have to ask me for it because I can't give you a live link to it, but Patrick brought this to my attention. It's a guy, he was in the Milwaukee Disrupt HR, and as you probably know, having attended those, they're 5 minutes, very fast, your slides go fast, there's really no room for you to kind of just stop and kind of lose it, but he did. And this is a guy, he does podcasts. Speaking is not unknown to him. He's done it before, but he writes about it in his newsletter, and he talks about his experience. And as he's writing about it, you literally feel like you're up on stage with him, like you're in that panic mode, like, oh my God, and that's what a good story does. It brings you right into it. You feel it. So again, these will be links so that you can see them for yourself. But if you get a chance, definitely suggest taking a look. So I suppose at this point, you're all probably just sitting there going, yeah, but I'm not a good storyteller, or I don't know what to talk about, or I don't even know where to start. Well, you don't have to worry about that. We're here to help. We can help write the stories for you. We can help tell your story, but we really need you, like Lynell said, to kind of help bring those to our attention. Let us know what you have going on. So let's take a look a little bit about that. It's kind of like on the news, they're always telling, the news needs news. So they're always saying, hey, if you see news happen, call our tip line. Well, it's the same thing for marketing and publications. If you see something happen, call us, let us know, because you really are our pipeline to that information. And then I'm also gonna give you a little bit of secret here. a simple story formula. It really is simple. And you will start to see this as you read more stories like, oh yeah, I now recognize that. You basically take something that happened to you, some everyday activity that you did that helps relate that to what you're ultimately going to be talking about, and you relate it to work, some kind of a work insight. So something as easy as, I was at Home Depot the other day, because actually this really is a story and I was there. I was at Home Depot. I needed to find touch-up paint for my house. It's an eggshell white. And I got to Home Depot and I'm looking at this vast array of white swatches going, I had no idea. I had no idea how many different colors of eggshell white there was. And I honestly didn't even know where to start. And it got me thinking about recruiting, how there are so many candidates out there.
I can see that one.
There are so many.
Another step in this one.
There are so many candidates out there who have similar qualities, similar everything. How do I find that perfect match for me? And then you can go on to talk about recruiting and how you do it and the whole process. But you've connected them with something that is an everyday occurrence. You've gotten them kind of engaged in what you're doing, and then you go on to talk about what you really ultimately want to share with them. So, Lynell, I don't know where you and Sue come up with all of your ideas, but really, they come from everyday. They come from everyday stuff. It's things that are happening to you. People relate to that. Interactions you have with your members, trends that you're seeing in the industry. Top 10 lists are always a big thing. The resources that you're reading. I often go to Lori and ask her what kind of calls they're getting on the hotline, because that just tells me the questions that our members are having. Is there a story behind that? Our surveys and polls, great information. How do we make that into more of a story? So really the ideas are everywhere. They're all out there. So we just really are asking for your help to tell us what you're seeing. What are you noticing?
And I'll jump in here too. I think we already do this really well, because I get, Kimberly, I'm looking at you. Every month you're giving me a list of what the roundtable facilitators are talking about, like other topics that have bubbled up in the conversation, and the facilitators are writing them down. We're capturing them. You're giving them to me every month. I talk to Lori Greenlees every day, every week. I talk to Mike Hyatt. I'm talking to the trainers. I'm talking to also our members, obviously, but MR will come to me, or it's pretty cool that it happens organically, that we want to share stories about something that we heard from our member that we thought was great, and maybe we could take that further and make it a developed story, let's say in our publication. So I think what we're saying is just keep doing that. And the power of doing that has created a pretty neat connection for us to, let's say, feature our members in the MRA Edge. I can think of one quick example where we had a story of one of our member companies, and it happened to be a story where we had an HRBP who was doing some work there and kind of spelled out the journey of how they did their engagement surveys and a variety of different things. And we had a different member actually read that publication, read that story, and say, oh my gosh, that is exactly what we are doing right now. That's the world I'm living in. And picked up the phone and called us and said, can you do what you did for them for me? And we're like, of course. So that's just really easy. I can give you 50 more examples like that, but that's just how powerful something like, telling a good story, connecting it to how we can help, helping them solve a problem that they have, and then making that all just kind of come alive. So I'll throw it back to you to kind of say, this is how we do use the stories based on what we hear.
And this, a lot, Lynell has been doing that a lot in her publications, but storytelling and marketing in our department is a little new. We want to share more of those stories so that when we're sending out these email messages, when we're making marketing materials, there's more of a story behind it that they're reading rather than just attend this event. Come to, we're developing stories behind there. So, we do need more of that information coming through to us. So again, if you look up on that screen, and I'm, unfortunately, if I'm missing something, I'm sorry, but I tried to come up with as much of a list as possible, but you can see there's a lot up there. So we really need a lot of stories because we have a lot of channels, a lot of vehicles to use them in. So the more stories we have to choose from, the bigger the pool we have, all the better, because we can take advantage of it. And again, like Lynell said, we can revamp these to be used across different ones, but it just to have that resource and pool of stories to pick from is going to be really helpful. So that's really a lot of what I had wanted to talk with you on storytelling. I didn't really want to get into how you do it. We can, again, help you. We can help you write it. We can help you tell the stories, but we really need those ideas to come from you. So any questions at all about storytelling? And I'm happy to sit with you and brainstorm, ideas. Okay, maybe not the cheesy Home Depot one, but there's but that's how easy it is, and that's how simple it can be. And it's really just a matter of what'd you do today? What did you hear today? What are you doing this weekend? Just finding out what's going on, and then we can, help create a story for you on it. So.
Quick comment.
Speaking, did you know that Michael Katz has been a keynote at 2 of our HR conferences in the past?
Did not know that.
Yeah,
No,
so, the connection is that HR has to be sales and marketing today as well. So that was his spin on it, and I loved him. We've become friends, so I hope to use him again in the future at an HR conference.
Great storyteller. I look forward when I get his newsletter in my inbox. Oh, good, it's Michael. I feel like
he's one I'll actually read.
Yeah.
There's a lot I delete, but he'll
too.
I'll read. Yeah.
You feel like you know him. He just he's connected with you on a personal level, and that's kind of a human element that the storytelling brings into a company. So it's good.
And it's also too why a lot of, we'll do video testimonials, or you'll notice in our publications and things, and even in the marketing messages, which I like, is that you'll have a picture of, like Kimberly or JJ, and it's like, let's talk. And we have it on all of our web pages. I mean, we didn't just do that because we're all like, super attractive people and we all want to be on, camera or something.
Okay, JJ's attractive.
But it's because people want to feel like that is, like, Dennis, you're like a human, like you're real. Oh my gosh. Like, so if you did send an email, now you've become more real to me because I know what you look like. And I kind of feel like I've heard some of your voice come out and some of the, personal touches that you've had. And so that why we put in all of our articles, the pictures of, usually it's the subject matter experts, but just know, like, that's not the person who wrote that article. We have a writer. That's what she's doing, and she's telling the story and she's doing that. But the subject matter expert is there so that the reader is making a connection to say, oh, Kathy, that's cool, man. You got a lot of good things to say, and kind of like to meet you someday. And yeah, so it's all by design.
Quick comment from
Patrick. At my marketing director roundtable last month, I had 2 easels full of topics to talk about in 2020. Marketing automation, email marketing, social media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one line in there, storytelling. Everybody in the marketing director roundtable said, that's the next topic we want to talk about. And they were like, we're reading so much about storytelling and marketing now. We all have to talk about it. So next Wednesday, we're going to cover that as well.
And to piggyback on that, we're remarketing
Another
Patrick's
story.
roundtable. And because of the topic of storytelling, this is the list of people that have been reaching out to us that want to attend as guests in the next couple of months. More want to attend next week, that we actually had to close it off. We have that many interested in attending.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's tied to the topic.
Remember that ad in the Super Bowl at the very beginning when they had the kids with the football? The kid, yeah. Was that an example of storytelling?
That was just a brilliant, brilliantly designed, commercial of how we mean, like when he runs out of the tunnel at the end. That was so cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So that'd be an example.
Well,
Shauna,
The emotion.
Yeah.
definitely.
for those of you that haven't seen the commercial, there's these, last year in the Super Bowl, there were NFL players in a banquet, and then they're fighting over a football. This year, it was the same sort of theme, but they wanted kids, young kids, 8, 10 years old. So it started with these kids in the field playing football, just, in shorts and stuff. And the story was the kid wasn't just running through the football field. He was running what looked like from across the city, and eventually, and he's got different scenarios that he's facing while he's running, different people, different obstacles, and he's overcoming these obstacles. And then at the very end, he gets to Miami, and then he runs into, on the commercial, he runs into the stadium, and then in real life, cut to live, the kid comes out of the tunnel and brings the football that they're going to use for the kickoff to the ref.
Yeah. See, and even as JJ was talking, I bet you guys were picturing that, right? Whether you even saw that commercial or not. And because if we can picture it, we remember. And that's what we want to, why we want to tell these stories with our members, is that they can picture it, they'll remember. They'll remember us and how, what we have to offer. So like you're saying, Patrick, like in the old days, marketing was like, let's talk about benefits and features. Boring. No one wants to hear that anymore. Like I can get that wherever, whenever. I want you to tell me why I should care about that. And same thing with job postings. In the past, we used to do, just list the job responsibilities. Ooh, wasn't that a good, ad in the newspaper? No, it's not anymore. I mean, it was back then, but not anymore. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear like, no, what's your culture? Like, help me picture what it would be like to actually work at your company. And then tell me about the job responsibilities later.
But
That's
you
what's
hook
evolved.
them with that culture. You hook them in the beginning with that description.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. This is Kimberly for those that are remote. JJ brings up the example of the Super Bowl and the commercial. How many of us have seen Super Bowl commercials and we don't remember what the product is that they're selling, but we remember the story? Is there any concern about doing that in this method here with all the different mediums that we're talking about?
there's always, yes, there is. And you bring up a great point. Somehow you have to be creative enough with your storytelling to make sure that we don't lose the MRA part of it. So yeah, but that is always, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Advertisers, sometimes they hit it on the head and sometimes they just don't. But then you repeat that story, and if they keep hearing it more and more, then, as they hear it more and more, they're making a connection. They're seeing our logo, and every time they see that commercial or, whatever, they'll make that connection. And, it's a matter of doing it correctly.
Yeah, my opinion is same. Like if they've made a good connection, you'll remember, but it's like the memorable thing of like somebody's riding in on a rainbow colored unicorn and then they're selling gum. Like I can't in my head make that connection. So I remember the colored, unicorn thing, but I don't remember that it was gum that they were selling. It's because they didn't do a good job saying like, that's a connection together. So I think if you do it right, you can overcome that.
Yeah, story and the product have to be related.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can shock them. Great. I remembered that, but I have no idea how it relates to your product.
Yeah.
Quick comment
So how
from
about
Minnesota
remote
here.
folks?
Hey, everybody. Yep, we're on.
Any
No worries.
questions?
Can you guys hear us?
Oh, can you hear you?
Oh, can't hear you.
You can.
Muted.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
No.
I think
You have to unmute. Are they muted here?
Oh, no.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Kat, do you have something? Can you?
Okay, I can hear you.
You have a question, Kat?
All
I
right.
don't have a question, but yes, I can hear you,
well,
Mike.
I can hear you, but she said she doesn't have any questions.
Okay.
At this time.
Can you really?
Yeah,
Kat,
because
could you
I have
let
a
them know
deaf
that
brother,
Mike
so
did,
I
but
can
I'll
read
just
lips.
follow up
That's
with
awesome.
Lynell
Yeah.
directly.
I mean, not 100% great.
Jeff
But
Schultz, can you say something?
yeah.
Actually, yeah, and I can hear you guys.
yeah,
and
all right, can't hear.
You can tell them. Okay.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Got it.
I know.
Mike,
Oh, can you hear it? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
volume.
Oh, speaking of that, can you hear me now?
Crazy
What was
concept.
everybody? What was that one? Can you hear me now?
Sprint?
There you go.
Some
All
cell
right.
phone.
So there you go. There's the connection. In all seriousness, I always find inspiration when we're looking at where to start. And I just had this the other day at a roundtable is, we think we've heard it all in our crazy world that we live in, but we haven't. And we're always surprised by something that a member says or someone else, or maybe when we're out there living our lives, but say, I thought I had heard everything, but now I just heard this. And I try to make a little mental checklist in my head of, okay, that is a new one, never heard that before. I think those make the best stories because everybody that we're talking to for the most part can relate to those when they're in our world, but very, very unique. So if we're looking for places for inspiration, that's where sometimes I start, is from the very unique stories that I hear from our members or from other HR professionals.
Yep, I couldn't agree more, Michael. This is Susan speaking. A number of years ago, one of our best audience participation HR conferences was a session that I called HR stands for the highly ridiculous. And it was they didn't get prepped ahead of time. Over lunch, I teed it up as a contest and had prizes. And then they needed to come up with their most highly ridiculous story, to the point that Mike just made. And of course we said, declassify it, don't say people's actual names. And then they loved it. They performed, somebody would stand up and say, well, this is my highly ridiculous story, and this is why I should get the prize, and somebody else. And they were real stories. But, had content been a focus or a thing then, we would have had 15 or 18 real life stories to say, I got to go talk to that guy later because that was amazing, or that was incredibly dumb, or whatever it was. But the HR standing for highly ridiculous, and we gave out prizes. There's a million stories that our members out there that they're willing to share, as long as you're treating them with respect and not opening them up to ridicule. But these were amazing stories.
Hey, it's Deb. I'm going to add one more thought, and that is that we've had some experience with this. I'd love to see it used more. When we're doing presentations, for example, we're pairing an MRAer with a member doing the presentation together, because we can speak to, they can tell the real story, and then it becomes even more powerful. So I look forward to more application of that.
That's a really good point, Deb. It reminded me of like how your kids don't listen to you; they'll listen to someone else telling. That's it. Where my head went with that, like, have somebody with you to validate your brilliance.
Keith, did you have something?
Yeah, this is Keith. I was just going to share a practical tip when I've coached executives or others on being a speaker, because sometimes we're bound by our PowerPoint, or we think we have to get through every point. And, if you have a 30-minute speech or a 15-minute speech, having a story anchor, at the beginning or the end or the middle, it's the safest place to break away from your PowerPoint. You can literally step away from the podium because it's your story and you know it. So I just think it's a good thing to add, so every couple of slides or so have a story, a member story, a personal story. Of course, it has to be relevant to your point. But it's just it's a good way to let yourself have a break, because when you're telling a story, your emotions get to a more relatable level than presentation person, so that's just a little applicable tip, I guess.
Yeah, that's a perfect point, Keith. In fact, if you've ever been in front of any audience, if you've done training or speaking, if you are working off your PowerPoint slide, just watch their demeanor, and people will be, maybe doing this a little bit or looking around, and you start telling a story, all of a sudden they sit up and they're making eye contact and they're kind of leaning in a little bit. It's super interesting. You check it out sometime, but you'll actually physically see your audience kind of change to listening, because they do. That's what we crave. We want to make connections with people, so we want to hear those.
Susan does that at every HR.
Yeah.
Done what?
You do that at every HR conference at the beginning.
Try to tell a story?
Yeah, you always tell a little story.
I do. I try to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Keith.
Lynell, and this, I don't know if this is still true in PowerPoint, but I think it used to be when you're in show mode like you are now, if you hit the B key, it blackens out the screen.
It
So
does
all eyes-
control B.
No,
Oh, just
the
be,
B.
oh, yeah.
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 So then literally all eyes are on you. I mean, I've done that where I'm like trying to get the group to pay attention. I hit the B
Yeah.
screen and I leave the stage.
Oh.
Pay attention to me. This is important stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, my wife's a public school teacher, so she's giving me all kinds of tips on how to get the troubled students to pay attention.
Perfect.
Nice.
That's good. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we're here to help anytime. We like to write, we like to tell stories, and we want to help tell your stories. So let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
I thought it was really happened this morning.
Really,
Good.
there wasn't. One street I was coming down, it was blocked because